Episode 3 of Grotesquerie. Oh my god, another great episode. Listen, I am locked into this show. Let's just get up into it, okay? We start out with Meritt filming for her audition tape for the show she wants to be on. It's kind of like a My 600-Pound Life. She's micromanaged by a very drunken Lois, but girl, then again, when isn't Lois drunk, okay? Lois then sees a guy walk by and it seems like it was an illusion maybe. They then move to the kitchen where Lois is preparing a turducken feast for Meritt, but Lois has a stipulation, which is Meritt can't judge her for her drinking and Lois will do the same for Meritt's eating. So they're kind of enabling each other's demons here. Sidebar, this is where a lot of us learned the term engastration, which pretty much means stuffing one animal into another. While they're having dinner, Meritt asks Lois to tell her the story of how she met Marshall for the 1001st time. They met one night while Lois was waitressing near the university. They hit it off right away, and from that night onward, they were together. He was the one who encouraged her to become a detective. As part of her story with Marshall, she was putting together a puzzle that seemed to be a religious puzzle that had a goat's head in it. Alright, also, we know that in present day Meritt is good at puzzles, so I guess she gets it from her mama. Alright, Lois tells Meritt that most days she does love her, and the days she can't, she tries to. Ooh, that's deep, that's heavy, you know, hearing that from your mother, you know. Meritt, despite Lois's stipulation, tells Lois to stop drinking, and Lois tells Meritt to stop eating as Lois takes a drink and Meritt takes a bite of food. I loved it. After a nightmare that night, Lois receives a call the next morning informing her that there's another body. She is drinking and driving per usual, and girl, Lois, get it together, okay? She arrives to the crime scene, which is some sort of dance hall. The music is still playing along with the strobe lights. This time, it's a human body with possibly multiple victims, with the goat's head similar to the one in Lois's puzzle when she met Marshall. Officer Jack tells Lois he smells the vodka on her and that she needs to leave. Jack wasn't wrong, but he could not argue that Lois is great at her job because she figured out all the body parts of the victims, some of which Officer Jack had interacted with. She remembered each detail about each victim. She implies that Jack doesn't care about the community because all of these victims were, well, a part of the community. Sidebar, Niecy was fucking acting here, okay? The next scene is Lois, Officer Jack, Sister Megan the Stallion, and other detectives working to get to the bottom of these crimes. Sister Megan tells them they need to decode the language he's speaking, he the killer that is. She says that there are clues on the bodies down to the victims' tattoos. Lois suggests that it could be a surgeon or someone who knows anatomy and someone who knows her. Lois and Sister Megan leaves. Officer Jack and another detective want to get rid of Lois for her drinking. Another one seems to have compassion for her for what she's dealing with at home. She tells him that Lois has closed more cases than all of them and to show her some motherfucking respect. We then see Father Charles' fine ass at church with what seems to be the board of the congregation. They want to get rid of the church newspaper, but Charles calls bullshit, saying that the paper is making a profit. The mother of the church says that the stories are pornographic, and Charles is like, and? They kind of start agreeing with him. He then says that these murders that are happening are all parables and begin quoting scripture. Girl, he gagged them all. They ain't have shit to say other than less relish on these hot dogs, okay? He says that the church needs to modernize and even suggest an OnlyFans, girl. Later, we see him in the church alone in a see-through gown and those ass-out chaps that he loves so much, twirling to Ave Maria. He then gets a call from Sister Megan. She's working on the next story about the hooker's body parts that were used at the latest crime scene. He compares this case to a case in the 1980s where there were several gay victims. He is thrilled with Sister Megan's story, and we learn here that The Exorcist is his favorite movie. Father Charles. Sister Megan then heads upstairs to Father Charles's room to drop off a hard copy of the story. She finds him in a towel. Baby, Sister Megan the Stallion is looking at his body, ready to risk it all. Do you hear me? She stays sharp though, and she asks why he wanted her to deliver the story to him in person and not via email. He avoids the question and further compliments her writing. He then says that her angelic face lifts her spirits. He then asks her to dry his back. She goes to dry his blister-covered back after spitting on the towel. They both start moaning. He says, "Let's go to the press with this." She places her fingers in his mouth. I was gagged. Baby, Sister Megan Thee Stallion loses her shit as she begins kissing his neck. Father Charles loves it, but he screams no, and then begins quoting scripture. Sister Megan runs out of the room, down the hallway, foaming out the mouth, almost as if Father Charles performed an exorcism on her. Sidebar, I was really hoping she got to fuck him. We then see Lois at the hospital entering Marshall's room, where we see Nurse Sexy Red covered in blood at Marshall's bedside. She tells Lois it's a bed sore and that she needs her help with it. They take care of it together, and Lois says that Nurse Sexy Red should be ashamed of herself for letting this happen. Nurse Red then insults Lois regarding her alcohol, saying that she never takes any responsibility. She says that this is what happens when you bully the people, meaning the hospital staff, trying to help you. Lois is in tears. Nurse Sexy Red says that it's time to talk, and girl, get this. Nurse Sexy Red wants power of attorney over Marshall. Bitch. She says that she cares about him more than Lois. Nurse Sexy Red then suggests rehab for Lois. Lois, of course, denies. Nurse Red says that she needs to sign or she'll be the cause of Lois losing her job, Marshall, and so much more. Baby, Sexy Red wants the smoke. And she also wants Marshall. Lois then storms outside for a cigarette, where it's lit by a guy named Eddie Lachlan, played by Travis Kelce. Now, the way that Eddie swiftly, you see what I did there? The way that Eddie swiftly lit her cigarette makes me feel like he's supernatural, perhaps unconscious. He starts flirting with Lois, and she starts flirting back. He tells her he doesn't think that she should be driving right now, but she leaves anyway. As she's drunk driving, she sees a figure walking on the road. That plus her drinking caused her to crash. When she wakes up, she's handcuffed to a hospital bed. She was told that she was arrested due to her alcohol levels while driving. One of her colleagues tells her that she's trying to help her because no one else can solve this case. Eddie then brings her lunch. Her colleague is not happy having to defend her behavior and leaves. Eddie stays, and see, I don't think that Lois's colleague sees him, and that's why I think he's supernatural. She asks Eddie to unlock her, and he does. They're still flirting as he gets her clothes for her. They run out of the hospital together and no one sees them. Yeah, this has got to be some supernatural shit taking place. They then drive off into the night, and it was actually a super cute moment. Another great episode. I mean, there is not a dull moment. The writing is great. You know, I'm really enjoying it. Episode 3 of Grotesquerie.